Okay. So we're actually going to start in reclining bound angle this morning to get centered. So you can set that up. If you have a bolster, that's a nice support. If you don't, you could just roll a blanket or two blankets together to create that kind of long, thick, round support. And you probably want a little additional height for your head. And then we are going to bring the strap around the lower back and underneath the toes. So you want to make that big loop. So today we're working on opening the front spine, also known as back bending. And we'll just do some various poses to help the front spine open. Usually we have the back spine open because we do a lot of rounding and forward kind of slouching. So it'll help us bring more flexibility to the front spine and kind of make the front and back spine more equal. So you might also need to use your blocks for hip support. So you might tuck those under your knees or thighs. And then when you sit back, make sure you're leaving room between your buttocks and your rib cage. So we only want the bolster to really start where the rib cage begins. So you might need to lift the butt and just kind of pull it away and maybe even take the tailbone up toward the ceiling to encourage the lumbar spine to lengthen. Make sure your strap is as tight as you can kind of stand for the first edge, and you will start to loosen up and maybe the strap can be pulled tighter, but just find that first level of tension on your strap that is giving enough support to keep the legs nice and close, to keep you in a really nicely bound pose. Have the hands, palms turned up. And if your chin is pointing up and your forehead's dipping low, just take a moment to either increase the height under the head or to rock the head to encourage the neck to lengthen out. And this is one of those beautiful poses. Once you set it up, you can really just surrender. So taking some moments here to just arrive. Maybe you haven't fully allowed the complete weight of your body to settle in yet. Just kind of explore the shoulder area, the groins, the hips, where there's maybe some gripping going on in the body. It doesn't necessarily need to be there. And just take a moment to envision your front spine lengthening open. Meanwhile, the back spine is getting a nice little bend. Really healthy thing for our discs to move the spine in both directions. And notice how this breath is really supporting, this pose is really supporting your deepest breathing. Nice thorough inhalation. And just see if you can take your mind, which is probably wandering around a little bit, just attach your attention to each passing breath. And 3 more cycles of breath. Maybe here some sort of intention finds its way into your heart for this practice. You're going to start to find your way out. You might be able to slip one of your feet out. You might have to loosen the belt. Once your feet are free, just stepping them wide, letting the knees come together. You can fold your hands in onto your belly if you like. Just another few moments here. And then gently ease over to one side. Just get yourself free of the props. You can move everything off of the mat. We're going to come into heart chakra pose, starting with a really modified version. So it's like table pose with the knees in line with the hips. And you're just going to take both of your arms and just kind of grab your elbows with your opposite hands. The elbows are roughly underneath the shoulder line, and just place your head on your arms, forehead on your arms. We're trying to keep the butt right above the knees. It looks like, I think everybody has it. So each time you exhale, just surrendering the scapula, the shoulder blades, let them sink in deep toward the front body. And every time you inhale, lengthening the spine. Like you're pulling the sacrum away from the skull and the skull away from the sacrum. And again, just visualizing the front spine. We're going to do a lot of emphasis on the front spine in front of the sternum. So right there, just bringing your attention, see if you can visualize the bend in the spine, convex kind of curvature to the front spine. So we're going to bring a little more into this, just opening up your right arm now. So your right arm is extended forward. Your forehead still on your left arm. And now see about extending the left arm as well and bringing your head straight down to the floor. Getting the chest to come in a little bit lower. And then folding in the right arm, couple breaths. And then the left again, we're back to our first position. And then taking your tailbone, point it down, rounding your back, coming to hands and knees. Step your knees wide, sit back for child's pose. So swing the feet together. Reaching the hands as far forward as you can. Try to keep the arms off the floor. So straighten out the elbows. Pointing the tailbone down. Bringing length and width across the back. On an inhale, come forward for table pose. And we're going to come into downward facing dog. So take the toes underneath. On an exhalation, extend your legs. Keep the hips far back. Draw your hips away from your wrists. Try to open up the backs of the knees, even if you still have some bend, that's okay. Keep the heels lifted until the very last couple of moments. So keep your heels really high. Try to keep moving the shoulder blades in toward the chest. And now see about the heels descending, but try not to bring the hips down with the heels. Resist the sitting bones away from the heels. And on an in-breath, glide forward to a plank position. You might have to adjust your feet back. When you take the tailbone into the body here, try to move the chest forward. So this is our back bending kind of procedure, is tilting the pelvis back to open the front of the chest. Look forward if you can. Shooting laser beams out of your heels. Good. And then you can bend elbows and find chaturanga down to the floor, or you can just take the knees down. We're coming down to a prone position for cobra pose. So slip your hands a little farther back so they're closer to the lowest ribs. Pin the elbows in. Make sure the feet are separated hip distance. Your legs are even on the floor. And on an exhale, bring yourself into Bhujangasana. Try to wind your inner elbows forward. And when you do that, you'll feel the flesh of the arms rotate from the front of the armpit towards the back of the armpit, which helps the chest to really broaden. Broaden across the buttocks. Don't let your butt clamp. Lift your inner thighs up, roll your outer hips down. Take the head up, take your eyes up. Open the front spine, 3 more breaths. Come to the top of an inhale, and then exhale, lengthen yourself back to the floor. Wonderful. We're gonna take the Sphinx position here with the elbows underneath the shoulders, and you're gonna turn your 4 fingers on each hand toward the corners of the mat. And then step your knees to the edges of the mat and let the insteps of your feet kind of face the floor. Good. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of scrub the mat with the hands to get the arms fully up and extended. Wind the inner elbows to face up. Remember that visual in your mind's eye of the armpit, front armpit, winding around to the back armpit. Look slightly farther up, which carries the spine up. It gives us a little more lightness. Maybe this is it. Maybe you're going to join the heels. That's a deeper back bend if you join the heels. Couple deep breaths. Slowly, you're going to release the legs if you took the legs up. Then you're going to bend the elbows, bring the arms down. And then you're going to move your legs back into the hip distance, centered up front thigh position. And we're going to take supported Sphinx now. So the bolster, and again, the 2 rolled blankets, if you don't have a bolster, you're going to kind of wedge it in front of your body. And wedge it far enough underneath your chest and some of your belly that you're able to plant your elbows underneath your shoulders. Go back to the legs, make sure your legs are still centered up and they're spacious enough. Your kneecaps are down, all 10 toes are down. Your butt is soft, it's broad. Anchor into your small toes. And then pressing down into the elbows, try to pull the elbows and the backs of the upper arms into your bolster. So you're using the arms to kind of leverage the chest opening, to kind of leverage the pelvic tilt. And then pick a position for your neck. So it's not creased, it's sweeping flow through the rest of the spine. You might have to close your eyes to find it, because sometimes the eyes can deceive us. And then you're going to stay in kind of this effortful position where you're using the arms, you're pulling up against the arms against that bolster. Your chest is forward. And you're really trying to take that tailbone toward the floor. Roll the inner thighs up, small toes down, butt stays soft. And let your belly really push against the soft prop that you're using with each inhale. So don't kind of baby that. Sometimes we can shrink the breath down because we have a more compact position. Actually, use it to your advantage to push that breath into the back body. Try to keep shoulders low, neck is long, space between the earlobes and the shoulders. Watch that the eyebrows don't jump up or the temples don't harden or jump up. Again, this downward softened, closed eyes gaze might help you. And then go ahead and just soften those efforts. We're going to move the bolster out of the way. So sometimes I just do one arm kind of coming to center, to push me up. I use the other hand to free myself. And we're going to be coming into hero pose, which we're going to recline today. But we're going to recline in the Paryankasana version, which means we're going to use the 2 blocks. And you'll just set them up behind your seated hero setup so that when you do, the time comes to recline, they're already there. So I like to use 2 tall blocks, one behind the sternum, one for the head. And then you're going to go into whatever setup you use for Virasana. So maybe padding where your legs will go. Maybe you need support under your sitting bones. Remember, we want the knees together, the feet slightly wider than the knees. All 10 toes point back, not sideways. And when you look at your kneecaps, you see 4 corners looking straight ahead. We don't see, oftentimes you see inwardly rotated knees. That's going to misalign your knees and eventually injure your knees. So maybe moving the flesh of the legs, the under thighs roll in from the outer to the inner, and then the calf muscle goes the other way, from the inner to the outer. So with the sitting support, make sure it's sufficient, but that it's not more than you need, because we want to keep being able to descend the sitting bones. Eventually they'll be on the floor. Another prop you can use if your knees are uncomfortable is height under the sitting bones or a sandwiched blanket between your calf muscles and your thighs. The pose doesn't go very well if we are working with pain. We have to find ways to support ourselves. So just take a moment to take your fingertips onto the soles of the feet, which helps the shoulders move back. And if you can't touch your feet, you'll just touch whatever is kind of right beneath your fingertips when you are, yeah. So Dusty, I saw you, if you need the blanket, you can use it. If you couldn't reach your feet there, you could just put your hands on the blanket. But then move the tailbone in, lift and spread the chest and adjust the skull so it's right above the spine. And then think about the flesh from the front armpit to the back armpit. And rotate that flesh. Winding the arms, which will really help your shoulders sit back. It'll help the shoulder blades move in. Navel, attach a tether from the navel to the spine. We want to keep that in close proximity, the belly button to the spine, so that we don't go pushing into the abdomen and shortening the lumbar. A couple breaths. We're going to take it back and just know right here before you recline back, you may not get all the way to those blocks. So they're kind of a goalpost. You may or may not reach them. If you do, you're going to get this really beautifully supported back bend. If you don't, you're going to have to use your hands for support to whatever degree you can recline back. So just start working toward that goalpost. Remember, the knees we want to keep together and down. So if they fly up or apart or both, that's more important than how far you take the torso back. So come back to arranging your legs in integrity. So you can use your thumbs to guide that first block so that it hits you right where you want it. And then of course the head will come back onto the second block and you might need to go and find it like I just did and place it, okay? So if you've gotten this far and you are supported by blocks, the arms can now continue that arc. They come above the head and reach toward the floor. And if you aren't touching down on blocks, of course, you're using your hands to keep yourself supported in that kind of partially reclined position. So wherever you are, we'll take the next minute and breathe and work the actions of the back bend. Tailbone moving in, pelvis tilting back, connecting the belly button to the spine, shoulder blades tipping in. Every time you breathe in, imagine the chest rising a little bit. Firm foundation in the legs. Soften the temples, soften the eyes. If your hands have hit the floor and you kind of have nowhere to go, that's the point you grab the elbows so that you can continue to open the chest. You take the weight of the arms off the floor, and that helps you move the chest into an even more spacious open position. Halfway there, so about 5 more breaths. One way you can support an overly curved lumbar spine is to compact your front ribs. So as if the front ribs, rib cages, the sides of the lobes have a zipper, and you're going to zip it. So you pull them toward midline and toward the back body. With the next exhale, just fully finish that out breath. If your arms are overhead, you're going to move them back to the feet, and you're going to inhale with a firm torso, firm abdomen, leading with the chest back to an upright position. Good job, everyone. That's a big pose. So to relieve the legs, we are going to do another downward dog. So you can start to just kind of move everything out of your way. And once you're ready, exhale yourself into position. And then once you're in that kind of rough inverted V shape, you refine it. Keep the heels really lifted. Tilt the pelvic bowl forward now. Try to dip the shoulders lower. With every exhale, plunge those shoulder blades in toward the chest. Yawning open the backs of the knees. Rolling the inner knees back. Rolling the inner thighs back. Move your chest any amount closer to your thighs. And then attempt to lower the heels without losing the height of the sitting bones. So resist the heels away from the sitting bones and the sitting bones away from the heels. And then start to tiptoe toward the wrists. And you're just going to dangle here in a resting uttanasana. So the feet are aligning, toes right in front of the heels. Your feet are hip distance apart. Grab your elbows in your hands. And just hang freely. Try to tap into the weight of the torso, the weight of the skull. Surrender that weight. Shake the head free if you feel kind of stuck in your neck. Maybe circle the chin. And then drop your hands with a firm, kind of tightened abdominal support around the spine, like it's particle board. Come up. So don't round up. It's really not good for us to round or roll up. All the way up. Here we are, standing. So just kind of to recalibrate, now that we're standing, we'll come into mountain pose. Join your feet if you can, big toes together, heels slightly apart. Lift and spread your toes. Place the toes with as much space between as you can. Try to have the even amount of pressure between big toes and small toes. And then keeping that, lengthen each heel back. So you're growing the length of the feet. Shoulders in line with hips. Skull above the spine, drop the shoulders. Imagine you have weighted gloves on. Imagine there's a rope attached to the top of the head. You're suspended from the ceiling. Close your eyes. Look away from the brain. And imagine the pelvic bowl. So it's probably, for some of us, it tends to sit forward. Others, it tends to sit back. Find your neutral. So if it was full of liquid, it's flush to the top with the liquid not sloshing out either side. As you keep finding that ascension or lightness along the spine, keep dropping the shoulders. Firm the legs, hugging the muscles onto the bones. Slowly blink your eyes open. Shake the limbs free. Kick the legs. We're going to do crescent pose 3 ways. So the first way is grabbing the pant legs from behind. So, or shorts, whatever you have on, you're grabbing the fabric. And for a lot of us, because we have tight shoulders, we can only grab kind of the center. But if your shoulders allow, grab closer to the inner thigh. So you're grabbing with both hands, kind of weird, but it's a good prop to help support us in this first version of crescent. So with both hands, just kind of pinching the fabric underneath the line of the buttocks. So it's on the thigh kind of side of the buttocks. And then you're pulling the fabric apart, like you're about to rip it. You're pulling it outward. This is assisting your inner thighs to roll back and spread the buttocks. So we're kind of assisting the flesh. Now the feet should be hip distance to allow for a nice broad kind of sacrum and a comfortable pelvis and abdomen. Lift your shoulders, roll them back. Keep pulling on the fabric of the pants. Start tipping the pelvis back, take the tailbone into the body, lift your sternum. Like there's a big hook there and someone's lifting you out of the water. Let your eyes track up the wall. Rotate the flesh from the front armpit to the back armpit. And so when we really come into our back bends thoughtfully, we shouldn't feel a lot of that kind of strain or like you want it to end. It should feel spacious and peaceful. So ego can really come in our back bends. And we have this version of ourselves in our back bends that most of us aspire to, but we can't reach. And so it's kind of always a disappointing experience. So I really like to teach the back bends in a way that you can kind of maintain your peace of mind. Inhale, come up, release the fabric, shake out your hands, maybe your wrists, maybe kick out your legs. That was version 1, just to kind of train the flesh of the legs, which now we won't have the assistance of our hands. We're just going to remember it on a cellular level. So the second version, hands to hips. And you can see your elbows like to sit wide, which of course shortens the shoulder girdle. So clamp the elbows in, broaden the shoulder girdle, and use your thumbs to push in on wherever your thumbs are hitting to signal the posterior pelvic tilt. Pushing the back, the front lifts, back descends. That's good stuff. Remember your inner thigh rotation, your broad buttocks. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, lift your sternum. Keep the elbows clamping. Keep your temples soft, your eyes resting on pillows. You're only taking this to the point where you can support with wise actions. You're not going into that irritated, agitated, white knuckle zone that so many of us, including myself, can end up in a back bending practice. Buttocks forward, front thighs back, lengthen through the crown. 3 more breaths. Nobody cares how deep it is. It's all about how it feels, sensation rather than shape. Inhale, come up, 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 up. And then exhale, release what you need to release. Maybe your wrists, maybe you're kicking the legs again, maybe you're flapping your arms. So last version, full version, we're gonna go into Urdhva Namaskarasana, which is upward prayer. So for some of us, I know you can't fully see my arms here, but for some of us, if we are joining the hands, we lose some of the integrity because the elbows end up bent or we get really shortened in the shoulder girdle. So you have to really find the most integrous pose for yourself. So Urdhva Hastasana might be a better position for you. If joining the hands, you come into this kind of like bent elbow thing, or you're rounded in the chest or collapse in the chest. So if prayer pose is not working, go ahead and separate. You might even need to open up wider than shoulder width. You might even need to go into like the Gumby goalpost cactus, whatever you want to call it, to accommodate a broad chest. So find your arms, feet are hip distance again. We're going to kind of incorporate the last 2 versions that we took. So remember the thighs. Remember what the work of the hands on the hips also kind of helped you with. Come to the top of an in-breath. Rotate the inner thighs back and start to arch back. Lift the sternum. Compact the buttocks into the front body. Let the backs of your thighs absorb the fronts of your thighs. Navel tethers to the spine. pelvic bows tipping back, long neck. Good, inhale, up, 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 and exhale, release the arms. Back to mountain if you can, join the big toes, heels slightly apart, shoulders in line with hips. Find the spaciousness of the soles of the feet. Broaden the toe bases, extend the heels back. And then blink the eyes closed, drop the shoulders. And just allowing for breath, whatever that breath is showing up as right now. Just observing the breath, regulate. The back bends are really invigorating. They can be exhausting. We're trying to learn how to make them less exhausting and more invigorating. But the breath might be still a little bit less than. We're just staying a few more moments. So for the next couple of standing poses, we're gonna use a chair. Actually, we're only gonna use the chair for one of them. So if you don't have a chair, we'll get by without it. I can kind of show you, if I see some of you don't have a chair, what we're gonna do instead. If you do have a chair, you're gonna place it to either short end of your mat with the high part, the back facing you. Hang on, I have to let my crazy dog in. So we're actually going to be doing a forward fold Parsvottanasana, but only the half version with really the nice opening in the chest, which we felt in heart chakra pose. So with the chair, looks like everybody has one. Yeah, okay. We're going to stand facing the back of the chair with the right foot forward, left foot back. Your feet are separated hip distance wide, even though they're not, of course, underneath the hips. And your distance from the chair is really determined by the length of your torso and arms. So you're going to move the chair, and it doesn't have to be on the sticky mat. It can slide, that's fine. Your feet should be on the sticky mat. Move the chair so that your wrists rest on the chair. The reason we want the wrist resting is because we want the palms to face. If we grab the chair, it tends to shut the shoulders down. It tends to internally rotate the shoulders. So I know it's not the most comfortable, but the outer wrists are resting shoulder width apart on the back of the chair. So take a moment to rotate right hip back, left hip forward, create like a tabletop surface for your lower back. Make sure it's not rolling down on the right side. And then use the position to allow the head to start to move through the space of the arms, to allow the shoulder blades to sink in toward the chest, and to really tap into that area. Most of us have that really knotty, rounded tension behind the heart center. That's what we're really tapping into today. We're getting a really nice open extension to the front spine in the kind of the sternum chest region. Okay, so you're just going to continue for a few exhales, really let those exhales sink you deeper. Even though you want to feel really extended through the fingernails, the shoulders are not moving in that direction. Pull the shoulders back toward the hips. The shoulders, if they're confused, they get achy and crampy and irritated. So tell the shoulders which direction they're moving in. Last exhale. Now you can grab the chair to get out of here. So grab the chair, scoop the belly toward the back. Remember, we always want to support the spine, step forward, and just switch your legs out. Okay, same thing, second side. You have to make sure you're balancing your feet, you're squaring your hips, you're rotating that outer right hip forward, left hip back to align the hips. Think about your torso sides being even. Pull the shoulders toward the hips, but extend out through the fingernails. And every time you exhale, drop those shoulder blades, sink them deeper. Let the head start to pass through the space of the arms. 5 more breaths. You're doing great. Take those exhales to their very finish if you can. One more. And now feel free to grab the chair, round the spine, scoop the belly toward the back, step forward with your right foot. And then turn around so the chair back is behind you and step just like a foot away from the chair. So mountain pose with the assist of the chair. Big toes together, heels slightly apart. Reach back for the chair. So the hands should be behind the shoulder line. Once you're touching the chair, you might notice some distortions. You might notice the hyperextended lumbar, the skull maybe is sitting too far forward. Maybe the navel and the spine are not close together. So make those adjustments here. Tailbone moves in, skull is above the spine. Buttock flesh moves forward, lengthen out the lumbar, and then keeping all of that good stuff, release the support of the chair. Your hands should arrive perfectly in place, your thumbs along the outsides of the kind of the centers of the outer hips and thighs. Just imagine the flesh of the front armpit rotating to the back armpit. Release your lower jaw, descend your temples, keep a downward gaze. Soften the skin of your face. So we're holding a pose, but we are never stagnant. We're always keeping the pose alive with our attention, with our breath, and with the necessary refinements of the pose. Not the nitpicky ones, but just the necessary refinements, the wise actions. Good. Go ahead and release. So the chair we're done with, you can move it aside. Actually, I changed my mind, I'm sorry. Let's use it to prepare for warrior one, because it is kind of nice as we get the legs kind of in their nice deep position. It's nice to have the support of the chair. So we'll start again with the back of the chair. We're going to face it. The right foot goes underneath, the left foot steps back. This time the front knee is bent for warrior one. And you're going to use the support of the chair in your hands to help kind of really take your deepest position with the lower half. So we're not worrying about balancing and steadying ourselves yet with the arms going up. Make sure your hips are square. You have a fully extended left leg. And then you're going to take both arms up, and maybe you can do Urdhva Namaskar if you're able to straighten the elbows. Otherwise, come into Urdhva Hastasana with the parallel arms or some version of that. Let your eyes track up the wall. Soften your gaze, soften your temples. Keep rotating the inner shoulder blades in, tilt the pelvis back. Keep the navel drawing back toward the spine, not pushing out away from it. Couple more breaths. Fully extend those elbows. On an inhale, push into the floor through the right foot to straighten. Release your hands. And then step the left foot underneath the right foot back. So just use that chair. So you get your legs really solid beneath you. You start with neutral pelvic tilt. Fully extend your right leg. Do your best to create a 90-degree shape with the left knee above the ankle. Take a moment to roll your shoulders back, to lift your chest, to take the tailbone in, and then raise the arms. Finding whatever position you're working with today. Take the arms any amount farther back. Soft eyes. Lengthen the lumbar spine. Pull the belly button toward the spine. Compact the front ribs like there's that zipper. Descend your temples. Unhinge your lower jaw. 2 more breaths. And then hands can come down. Leg can straighten. Step the feet together. And you can turn around and do that very same mountain pose, just reaching back for a moment, fingertips are there, inviting the shoulders back, then releasing the hands. And holding just for a few breaths. All right, so open the eyes. Now we are truly done with the chair. We're going to practice Ustrasana. So if you don't have a bolster, again, you're working with either 1 or 2 rolled up blankets. And if that's not thick enough, you can add some block height. So you're going to be sitting. It's not quite the Virasana position. It's knees in line with hips and feet directly back from knees. And if you have a bolster, you can just sit down on it for a moment. And if you're sitting on a blanket, just keep your blocks available because you might need additional height. Because we're about to place the fingertips onto the bolster to help us come into this pose. You might have to fill in with some block height. Okay, so we're going to come up. The hips are above the knees. The bolster is across your calf muscles, kind of waiting for you. And the feet are directly behind the knees. I think I said that. Okay, so we're going to use our fingertips to the bolster. This is where you're going to know if you need to add height. You might need to add something, any level of thickness underneath your fingertips. You're going to try to have your palms facing forward, which encourages that rotation of the inner upper arms to turn back. You might feel that your tailbone is flying back here and you have a shortened lumbar. So right away, you're taking the tailbone in. You're ironing out those hip creases. Notice if your butt is turning into a hard little nugget. We know how to correct it. It's that rotation of the inner thigh flesh moving back and outwards. So your buttocks should actually feel like they're spreading wider, melting like butter. Keep pushing your fingertips down to help you lift the chest. Your eyes track up the wall to follow the really beautiful arc of the spine. Soften your temples. All those wise actions are occupying your attention. Tipping that pelvis back to keep your lumbar long. Inhale, come up, 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 up. And exhale, have a seat on your props. So I like to remind people with this pose about the way we deceive ourselves with it. We do tend, for a lot of us, to throw the head back and feel this glorious pose where we literally have no movement underneath the neck. So it's one of the ways the body is like, I'm doing it, and we're not. So remember the index finger, thumb to your breastbone, index finger to your chin. When you're in the pose, you should keep that same spacing. And we aren't going to have the hand there to tell us. You're just going to do it right now as kind of a reminder. It's not the head thrown back where it pulls away from the index. In your deepest version of the pose, you still maintain that spacing, which will ensure that we're actually mobilizing behind the chest and not skipping over it. So the second one we're going to do, very same way, but just kind of keeping that in our mind's eye. Okay, so come back up. Place the fingertips, palms forward. Add height if you need it. Try to lengthen out those hip creases so you're not indented there. Tailbone moves in. Buttock flesh is soft and spreading. Inner thighs rolling back. Keep adding pressure through the fingertips. Lift the sternum. Coil the inner shoulder blade tips toward the chest. Rotate the flesh of the arms. Keep that perfect distance between your chin and your chest. Lead yourself into the pose really by lifting the chest. Keep it all about the chest. Another place we hypermobilize is the lumbar. So you also don't want to be just pinching off the lumbar. Keep the pelvic tilt working for you, keeping the lumbar long and the navel connected to the spine and the zipper between the front left and right rib cage. Wonderful. Inhale, lift yourself up. And exhale, have a couple moments just sitting on your, whatever you have there, soft prop, and just roll your head from one side to the other. Just release your neck. Okay, so we're gonna come into a seated twist, Bharad Vajrasana. So classically, we have one leg in hero, one leg in half lotus, which is a big ask. We're not gonna do the one leg in lotus, but we are gonna do the one leg in hero. So let's keep the right leg tucked into the hero shape where your heel is right outside the hip, and you might want to add the blanket padding if you need it. The left foot, you're going to tuck underneath the right ankle so that your left toes point out to the right and your right toes point straight back. So that's kind of the modified version of the half lotus. It's kind of a mirror image of itself. Eventually this left foot is on top of the hip crease, not today. So because there's so much momentum and weight to the left side here, take a blanket and sit on it with just your left buttock. So we're going to use the strap. So before you get too comfortable, use the strap, and it's probably still in a loop from Baddha Konasana, so that's good. We're going to keep it, we're just going to make it smaller. And you're going to wear the strap on your right arm, upper arm. Okay, so right arm has the strap. There's all that excess. You're going to just take it behind you. And then your left hand is going to crawl from behind your back. It's going to grab a piece of the strap close to the arm. And even if you can grab your arm here, we're going to leave a little room because we're going to get even more compact. So you're grabbing the strap behind you. We have this free floating right hand here. So even though you're imbalanced still, even though we have that blanket, try to correct for that. Bring some weight into your hero right shin, roll the outer right shin down. Come to the top of an in-breath, and on an exhale, you're going to throw the right hand over to the left thigh. You're going to crawl your right hand as close to the arm as it can go. What happened, Dusty? Yeah, so it's not making it there, so let out more slack. So you have more room to work with and get the hand as far as you can to the outer left thigh. Okay, so then walking the hand closer to the arm, you're attempting to really move the chest to face well off to the left. We started with the back of the hand against the thigh. We're going to keep that there, and it's going to help us bring that kind of congested, dark, closed down space of the right armpit chest. It's going to help it roll toward the sunlight, roll toward the center front body. Again, watch that you're not hardening your face, soften your face. Don't forget that outer right shin of your hero leg. Give it some purpose, roll it down. And if you can stabilize your lower abdominals a little bit more, kind of grip them toward midline, you're going to free up mobility higher up where we're targeting today. The thoracic spine, the dorsal spine. You're going to gain a little more movement there. And then after an exhale, inhale and lift yourself up and out of it. And we'll just start to set it up to the other side. You can move your strap first if you like. Leave it hanging out on the left arm. You're going to switch over your legs. We have a left virasana leg. And then the right foot tucks under the left ankle. You might need like a big amount of height under your right sitting bone. So you're attempting to get the hips really level, the pelvis really level. You still have to work for it a little bit, keeping a sense of anchoring on your hero leg. Once you're pretty well set up, you can take your right hand behind your back and just grab onto the strap closest to the arm as best you can. Have this open left palm here. Inhale, exhale, throwing the back of that left hand to the right thigh. Making a firm connection. Good. Try to rotate that right shoulder back. It might be rolling forward, so remember the armpit flesh front to back. Squeeze your hip bones together, engage those transverse abdominals, stabilizing the lower spine to bring more mobility up the spine. Visualize those left side ribs curling around toward the front body, toward the left a little bit more, or to the right a little bit more. Keep bringing attention back to the outer left shin, rolling down toward the floor. Two more exhales. After that second one, inhale for length. Release the pose. Take the strap away from your arm. And then you're going to come into a seated position on your mat. It's kind of like the sunbathing position. Knees are bent. The toes are in front of the heels align with the sitting bones. You're going to turn your fingertips to face toward your buttocks. The modified Purvottanasana, which is the inverted plank position. The not modified, of course, the legs will be straightened, but we're going to do a modified version here today. So on an exhalation, you're going to press into your hands, lift your hips, take the tailbone toward the ceiling, move the flesh of the arms, lift the chest as best you can, and have a seat. So we're going to do it 3 times because it's a big one and it's not one you can hold forever. So sit forward, drape your arms over your shins, bow your head. Second attempt. Feel free to add the straight legs if you're ready to do that. Otherwise, you're coming back to the bent knee version. In breath, and then exhale, you press into your feet and hands lift your hips. Tailbone moves in. We're resisting against gravity here. It's a lot to do. Do your best, and then have a seat. Arms over the legs, bow the head, couple breaths. Maybe for the last attempt, you try the straight legs. Maybe you're coming back to the bent knee version. So choose your own adventure. Big inhale. Exhale. One more try. And have a seat. Nice work. One more moment, just kind of rounding forward, draping the arms, bowing the head. Okay. So last but not least, Chatushpadasana. We're going to do the clasping hands and the tall block. The block is going to sit spine-wise, meaning not the horizontal setting, but running with the spine. So using the length of the block to cover as much of the tailbone and sacrum. If you can get yourself onto the high setting, great. Otherwise, work with the medium or the low. And so you start from bridge and you just place the spine-wise tallest version of block that you can under the tailbone sacrum area. And then you're going to bind your hands together. Some of us have limitations with this because of shoulders and other reasons. If you can't clasp your hands and also keep your hands down and elbows straight, modify by grabbing hold of a strap and letting the hands have a little more room between them. Because we want straight arms and we want grounded hands. So even if you're clasping, but your elbows are bent and your hands are floating, it's better to have a strap in your hands and more surface area to the arms and hands. So from here, just spend a little time adjusting. We're going to be extending the legs forward and heels on the ground. And when you do that, do it one leg at a time. And you're going to flex at the ankle so that the toes come above the heels. So when you're ready, taking the legs out one by one, pulling the toes toward the head side of your body, roll the inner thighs down and anchor into your heels, which is going to help you adjust the pelvic tilt. So pushing the heels down, it helps us get the tailbone up into the body toward the ceiling. And every time you breathe in, let the sternum lift, let it float. Keep rolling your inner thighs down. Look toward your cheeks, tilt your chin toward your chest. Think about the armpit flesh again, inner armpit toward the backs of the armpits. Good. So start to reverse these steps, sliding one foot at a time, back in line with your knees. Release your clasping or your strap. And then take your block down to its lowest horizontal setting. And let your knees gently fall in, your feet are wide, hands to your belly. Just a couple moments here, resting the lower back. And then feel free to move the block aside. Draw the legs in. And holding either your shins or your knees, just start to do little circles. Circle the knees around, massage your back. Make sure to change directions. Just inquiring into the body if anything else is needed before final resting pose. You might like the bolster behind your knees today. You might like to cover your body or your eyes or both. Just taking a few moments to create the shape of the pose of Shavasana. And then just starting the process of settling in. There's the easy, it's the worst acronym ever, RUFWA. But it's the easy kind of 5 points to follow, the breath. Just watching the breath. The second is to relax the body. You might move in a systematic way from the head toward the feet. Just signaling all the body parts to relax, starting with the outermost sheath of the skin, moving deeper inwards. After relax comes feel, so sensing, detecting sensation. And we move to watching. Anything you notice is fair game. And finally, allow. I think the most important piece of this pose is whatever bubbles up, to allow it to be there. So there's no effort, no striving here. Feeling your own expansive awareness. The back bends start to move us toward the ultimate pinnacle of this 8-limb practice, which is unification, samadhi, feeling of oneness. And the way the back bends work is it pulls the sense organs to look to the back body, which of course we can't see. So it starts to withdraw the sense organs. So for the last 2 weeks of December, we'll be doing restorative practices, pranayama practices. So start to invite just some deeper breaths to flow, start to draw yourself out of the pose slowly and gently. You might begin to include some simple movement. Nothing jarring. Let the movements increase as you're ready, letting the elbows eventually bend, the knees eventually bend. And when you feel ready, just shifting over to one side, maybe using your arms as a pillow. Maybe the eyes open here, but just not because you want to see anything, just because they just blink open. And as gently as you can, bringing yourself to seated. And once you're seated, connect your hands together in front of your heart center. Try to press up on the breastbone, try to roll the shoulders back. Relax your face. Look toward your heart. Let's take a nice breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. Thank you. So next 2 Fridays are holidays, so we don't meet. We do have the Monday, Wednesday classes, and we do have the 4 Fridays in January. So I hope to see you guys soon. Happy holidays. If I don't see you before they happen. All right, bye.